The future isn't AI versus humans. It's clarity versus noise. We think the battle is about tools, but it's actually about attention. Those who can't hear themselves will be ruled by whatever speaks the loudest. And in a world accelerating towards artificial everything, artificial urgency, artificial intelligence, artificial relevance, the rarest skill will be the ability to stay present with your own signal, because distraction doesn't always look like chaos. Sometimes it looks like relevance, like momentum, like success. And that's why it's dangerous, because you'll never notice what you lost until it's quiet enough to hear what never got to speak. Your signal doesn't scream, it hums, and it takes practice to recognize that hum in a world that rewards noise. So no, the world won't collapse because AI got smarter. It'll collapse because humans stop listening. Let's be honest, everyone's trying to keep up with algorithms, with trends, with acceleration. But here's the uncomfortable truth. If you don't define your signal, you will be defined by the loudest thing in the room. AI isn't the threat. Your reactivity is. The real danger isn't what AI creates, it's what it replaces without us noticing. Your ability to sit with an idea before acting. Your ability to let silence clarify what matters. Your ability to say no to more because you're clear on less. Reactivity is seductive. It feels like momentum. It looks like relevance, but over time, it fragments your agency. It dissolves your intuition. It makes you a machine, but not in power, but passively. Because if you're constantly reacting, and if you're not choosing, you're not creating, you're replicating. Your addiction to input is. Your inability to listen before you execute. That's the real threat. Technology will go faster, tools will get smarter, but that doesn't mean that you need to move dumber. What matters now isn't more power, it's more presence. The future doesn't belong to the fastest, it belongs to the most self-directed. And self-direction isn't a tech skill, it's a nervous system skill. It's your ability to pause when everything around you is pushing for speed. It's the capacity to hold an unformed thought long enough for it to become clarity. Because if you don't build that pause, you'll be hijacked by whatever's trending. And that's the trap. In a world moving this fast, stillness isn't laziness, it's leadership. Let me give you a lens of how I think about this. I call it the noise pyramid, and there are 3 levels. Level 1, you have the input reactors. They consume endlessly, scroll, click, react. They don't create, they echo. Not because they're weak, but because they lost contact with their own center. They're driven by dopamine, not direction. Level 2, you have your strategic executors. These are people who can create, they build, they optimize, they leverage AI, trends, tools, and they're effective. But sometimes they're building efficiently in the wrong direction. They confuse productivity with alignment. These are the operators, the builders, the doers. They know how to scale. They know how to move, but somewhere along the way, the machine got louder than the mission. They're so good at executing that they forget to reflect. They confuse traction with truth. Deadlines become the direction, and no one questions it, because from the outside it worked, but inside they feel it. The quiet dissonance, the hum of burnout, the subtle ache that asks, why does it look right, but still feel off? That's what happens when alignment becomes optional, when just keep going drowns out the maybe pause and ask why. In level 3, you have your signal holders. This is rare air here. These people know how to go still. They listen before they act. They don't chase relevance. They create gravity. They build from depth, not from reaction. They're not the loudest, they're the clearest. And that clarity will make them immune to most noise. In a world of infinite input, clarity isn't just power, it's protection. It protects you from the lie that faster is always better, from the belief that more tools equals more freedom, from the trap of spending your life building systems that don't include yourself. That's why signal holders seem quiet. It's not because they don't have answers, it's because they're asking better questions. Questions like, why am I really building this? Is this strategy or survival? Would I still do this and choose this if no one saw me do it? The signal doesn't want attention, it wants integrity. In the future that we're stepping into, it'll matter more than ever. So many people are optimizing their workflows, but have no idea what the work is in service of. They automate tasks, but haven't chosen the identity they're becoming through the execution. They're scaling themselves without checking who self even is anymore. You can be effective and empty. You can be relevant and completely misaligned. Because when you build from noise, you become noise. And then you wonder why you can't focus, why you feel numb, why it feels like nothing means anything anymore. Not because you're broken, it's because you've been operating from someone else's signal for too long. And here's the thing about someone else's signal. It's always louder, more urgent, more uncertain, because it wasn't built to reflect you. It was built to capture you. That's why clarity feels so elusive. It's not that it's hiding, it's that it's quieter than everything that you've been trained to trust. You don't need better input. You need deeper trust. Trust in your own timing, in your slower knowing. It's the kind of focus that doesn't show up on the screen, but shows up in how deeply you feel aligned. Here's the question I come back to every time the noise gets loud. Is this task, this choice, this decision a reflection of my signal or just a reaction to the environment? Because the answer to that question is the difference between clarity and burnout, between architecture and automation, between a sovereign future and a scripted one. You can't hear your own signal when you're living inside everyone else's feed. You can't create clarity when you're operating on input that never paused long enough to become wisdom. And you can't build a future worth living in if you're too busy reacting to a present that you never chose. Because if you don't choose your inputs, your identity gets shaped by inertia. One scroll, one click, one maybe this is what I should do at a time, until one day you realize that you've optimized a life that no longer has you in it. That's why I always come back to signal, because signal is the only thing that cannot be artificially generated. It's not a template. It's not a trend. It's the quiet moment where your self says, this feels like mine. And in a future flooded with answers, your real power will be in the questions that you're still willing to ask. So no, the war isn't humans versus AI. It's inner signal versus outer noise. It's your clarity versus the chaos. Your future self versus the feed. The next era doesn't belong to the loudest. It belongs to the stillest, the most internally referenced, the ones who know how to listen before they launch. Because the future isn't about just how fast you can build. It's about how deeply you can hear yourself first. Not your follower count, not your inbox, not the pressure to post, but that quiet signal beneath the urgency, beneath the systems that's been trying to tell you, this is the work, this is who you are, and this is how you want to feel. We're not just entering an era of artificial intelligence. We're entering into an era where the cost of clarity has never been higher. And the ones who will lead are the ones who protect their signal like a sacred flame. So ask yourself, am I building from clarity or just reacting with efficiency? That's the question. And your future will be the answer, because that's what clarity builds. Not just content, not just businesses, but selves. Grounded, aware, immune to manipulation. You can't outsource that. You can only protect it by staying close to the signal that's always been yours, even if it's been drowned out for a while. So let others chase faster, but you build from stillness, build from signal, because when everyone else is shouting, your clarity will whisper something unforgettable. This is yours. Keep going.